Welcome to The Backstory with Dr. Ricky Singh. This podcast is focused on bringing you the latest research-based information about dramatically improving health, well-being, and quality of life. And here's your host, Dr. Ricky Singh.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Backstory. I hope you're having a good week. And today I wanted to talk about a topic, something that I've been experiencing over the last 6 months as I trained for my first marathon. And have you ever wondered what makes someone a good athlete or a good parent or someone who's good at their job? And why is it that we see that some people are so accomplished while others may fail in similar situations? And what makes that difference? And typically we answer these questions either by playing the victim, thinking we weren't given the best genes or the best circumstances. He or she is successful because they're smart, or because they're athletic or skinny, or for other reasons, just praising their talents. But I think that there's more to the story than just that. But before we get into our main topic, I want to let you know that this podcast is a production of the Podcast Authority. And if you're interested in starting a successful podcast of your own or for your business, please reach out to my friends, Scott and Jason at the Podcast Authority by going to thepodcastauthority.com. Back to the topic. You know, when you start to look at it, talent and intelligence don't really play nearly as big of a role as you might think in success. And what makes a bigger impact than talent or intelligence? It's something called mental toughness, also known as grit. Now first, how does Webster describe or define grit? Grit is the ability to work hard and respond resiliently to failure and adversity. The inner quality that enables individuals to work hard and stick to their long-term passions and goals. So why is mental toughness so important? And more importantly, how can you develop more of it? First, I want to share with you a study entitled Grit, Perseverance and Passion for Long-Term Goals. And this study, authored by Angela Duckworth, who is a researcher in the Department of Psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, where I did my residency training. Basically, she describes a few scenarios in which the achievements of difficult goals has a lot more to do with just talent, but also a non-cognitive trait such as mental toughness or grit. So one of the stories that she shares is that each year, approximately 1,300 cadets join the entering class of the United States Military Academy known as West Point, right up here in upstate New York. And during their first summer, many of the cadets are required to complete a series of brutal tests, and this summer initiation program is known as Beast Barracks. And Beast Barracks is deliberately engineered to test the limits of the cadets, physically, emotionally, and definitely mentally. And you might think that the cadets who successfully complete quote, Beast Barracks are bigger or stronger or more intelligent than their peers. But Angela Duckworth found something very different when she began tracking these cadets. So at West Point, she tracked a total of 2,400 cadets spanning over 2 entering classes. And she recorded their high school rank, their SAT scores, their leadership potential score, which is something that reflects their participation in extracurricular activities. She measured their physical aptitude exam, which is a standardized test for physical exercise, and the grit scale, which measures perseverance and passion for long-term goals. And here's what she found. She found that it wasn't strength or smarts or leadership that actually predicted whether or not a cadet finished Beast Barracks. In fact, it was grit. It was the perseverance. It was the passion to achieve the long-term goals that really made the difference. So in the end, it was mental toughness that predicted whether or not a cadet would be successful, not their talent, not how strong they were, not how smart they were. In addition to her West Point study, she also discovered that Ivy League undergraduate students who had more grit also had higher GPAs than their peers, even though they had lower SAT scores and, quote, weren't as smart. Competitors in the National Spelling Bee tended to outperform their peers, again, not because of IQ, but more because of their grit and commitment to more consistent practice. And here's what Angela Duckworth summarized in this landmark study. Our hypothesis that grit is essential to high achievement evolved during interviews with professionals in investment banking, painting, journalism, academia, medicine, and law. Asked what quality distinguishes star performers in their respective fields, these individuals cited grit, or a close synonym, as often as talent. In fact, many were awed by the achievements of their peers who did not at first seem as gifted as others, but whose sustained commitment to their ambitions was exceptional. Likewise, many noted with surprise that prodigiously gifted peers did not end up in the upper echelons of their field. So, what makes someone mentally tough? It's great to talk about mental toughness, grit, and perseverance, but what do these things actually look like in the real world? Mentally tough athletes are more consistent than others. They don't miss workouts. They don't miss assignments. They study. They always support and collaborate with their teammates. And when you look at successful business owners and people who are successful at work, most of the time, successful people are great at delaying gratification. Successful people are great at withstanding temptation. They are great at overcoming fear in order to do what they need to do. And it's not just simply about prioritizing. People who are successful consistently keep doing what they have to do, and they have decided this is the most important thing to do. Well, the good news is that you can train yourself to become more consistent, and you can train yourself to become more mentally tough. And how do you do that? So I spent some time reviewing some of the research, and these 3 strategies seem to work well in the real world. And the first thing is define what mental toughness means to you. Now, going back to the story with the West Point Army cadets, being mentally tough to them meant finishing the entire summer and joining the military. But for you, it might be going 1 month without missing a workout, or going 1 week without eating processed or packaged foods, maybe meditating every morning, maybe spending 1 hour doing something creative or reading. Whatever it is, be clear about what you're going after. The second is that mental toughness is built through small wins. You can't really become committed or consistent with a weak mind. And how many workouts have I missed because my mind, not my body, told me that I was tired? And I am training for the marathon. This is my first marathon. This is the most I've ever run in my 42 years of living. And even I make excuses, whether it's crummy weather or it's raining outside and I want to skip a workout. Those are instances where I'm not executing some mental toughness. But mental toughness is like a muscle. It needs to be worked to grow and develop. And very often we think that mental toughness is how we respond to extreme situations. Sure, certainly mentally tough people show up in those challenging encounters. But really, it's the 1,000 small ways that we must push ourselves in order to become mentally tough. And I'll say it again, mentally tough is built through small wins. It's the individual choices that we make on a daily basis that really build our mental toughness muscle. And the third most important thing is that mental toughness is about habits. It's not just about your motivation. You don't have to be courageous or the most talented or the most intelligent, but really, you just have to be the most consistent. Habits are what form the foundation of our mental beliefs and ultimately what makes us successful in achieving some of our goals. So, why does all this matter? Now, every day I see patients and treat patients with pain, and pain is something impossible to ignore. And as soon as we feel that something is hurt, we are all pretty hardwired to start thinking, hey, I need to back off this exercise. I need to think about the pain and how to prevent future injuries. And certainly sometimes discomfort and pain is indeed a sign that you need to back off. But most of the time, with proper form, with proper guidance from a physical therapist or a trainer, with sufficient rest, some of this exercise-induced pain is just a sign that we are getting more aerobically conditioned and our muscles are breaking down so that they can build back even stronger. So for me, why this topic has been relevant is, again, going back to my marathon training. I have been training now for most of this year of 2022. There are about 8 weeks left in the marathon. And it's important for me also to develop my strategies on mental toughness, to focus less on the pain and more on forming habits of running. I treat patients with a broad spectrum of abilities and impairments. Some want to return to competitive sports. Others want to play and run around their kids or grandkids. And even some patients just want to walk with less pain and reintegrate with the community and their family members. Now, don't get me wrong. Goals are a great way to prioritize behavior and measure success. However, they're not really effective at creating changes in behaviors. It's actually habits And these routines that you develop through consistent practice, which can eventually happen subconsciously, habits create the behaviors that you need to achieve success. There is no such thing as overnight success when it comes to patients recovering from injury or surgery, and in my case, my race training. I have a friend and a colleague here at Wall Cornell who is also training for the marathon who said to me, "You can't cram for the marathon like you could in school. Back in college and even sometimes in medical school, you could get away without going to class and just cramming for the test. But the marathon is not so forgiving. You really have to change your behavior. You have to change your habits. And that is something that I'm still working on. And I think I'm slowly developing that habit of really turning into a runner. And like I mentioned earlier, there are days that I don't want to run and I don't want to exercise. It could be weather, it could be something I ate, it could be stress at work. And I need to work on my consistency. And I'm in that process of developing mental toughness. So if you're listening out there and you want to make meaningful changes in your life, don't worry so much about the goal. Don't worry so much about the end result. Put one foot in front of the other and start making moves in the right directions. 6 months ago, I could barely run a mile. Even the thought of running for 15 or 20 minutes seemed impossible to me. But so far, I've taken it one step at a time. And yes, while the marathon is the goal in my current situation, I genuinely believe that I've created the habit of running. And this is going to be part of my regular exercise routine, hopefully for the rest of my life. So in summary, habits, small, repeated actions, compounded over time, will give you the results you never could have imagined. So keep moving out there. We've got your back. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Backstory. Please subscribe, rate the podcast, and review The Backstory on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Play Music. And feel free to share this podcast on social media or even your own website or blog. This podcast is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of medicine, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice. To learn more about Dr. Singh and his clinical research, please follow him on social media. You can also sign up for his newsletter by going to www.rickysinghmd.com. That's RICKYSINGHMD.com.